Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Here are your hosts, Phil Adams, Jay Britton, and Andrew McCreadies.
The National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka NORML, releases its 2020 gubernatorial scorecard. You're going to want to listen to that. California tax increases on cannabis only helps the illicit drug market, and why cannabis companies shouldn't be greedy and should support home grow. We've got these stories and a bunch of other stuff that we're going to get to today, but first we're going to start off in the Granite State of New Hampshire. And this is a report from marijuanamoment.net. We're going to talk about the New Hampshire legislation, but Jay, there's a similar legislation that you know something about, Vermont's so-called non-commercial cannabis system. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, not a lot, but what I know about it is Vermont being New Hampshire's neighbor, obviously, they have a system whereby, and it's not unlike DC in some ways, it's legal to possess up to a certain amount. I want to say an ounce. It might be a little less. Right. And you can have plants. You can have up to, I believe it's 6 plants. 2 can be flowering. The libertarian in me loves it because it's like, let's make this legal without getting the government involved to fuck it up, basically. So you can have it, you can possess it, you can use it, you can share it. So if you grow a plant and you harvest it, you can give it to your friends legally and they can possess up to whatever the amount is. So yeah, that's how I understand it.
Well, it seems New Hampshire is getting ready to move in that same direction. The New Hampshire House Committee, or House Committee, approved a bill on Tuesday that would legalize marijuana for adult use. And it would be very similar to Vermont's non-commercial system. It doesn't provide for any retail sales. So not only is it keeping the government out, but it's kind of keeping the corporate interests out. It would allow an individual 21 or older to possess or gift up to 3/4 of an ounce of cannabis and grow up to 6 plants. So it sounds very, very strikingly similar to the Vermont's system. I'm kind of with you, Jay. I like that system. What were you saying, Andrew?
But you cannot legally sell it.
Right. No retail sales, no individual sales. You can give it to your friends, but you can't sell it to your friends. So
it's basically decriminalization is what it is, essentially.
Yes.
Most decriminalization says if you get caught with it with less than a certain amount, you get a fine of $50. This takes it a step further.
Right, but this is legalization. You have the legal right. You will have the legal right to possess cannabis within these parameters
and grow it.
Right. So I don't know, Jay. I'm kind of with you. I like this system. If this is now, I don't know if I would recommend this for everybody in every state, but for New Hampshire, Vermont,
yeah,
sounds like a cool deal. It sounds like they're right up there.
Well, I don't think it's an end result, because what about all the processing that needs to be done on cannabis?
Yeah,
or people want oils and they want concentrates, they want shatters. And the home person is not going to be doing that.
Right. And they want to know there's no pesticides and it's been tested.
Right.
You're right.
And if they are, there's going to be chances of trace amounts being left behind or what have you. So I think it's good, but it needs to be paired with the commercial industry.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's a great first step for a state that wants to move forward quickly and then give the government time to kind of set up regulations and set up a system for dispensaries and so forth. So, but I like it a lot.
But it's establishing a right of an individual, and libertarians should be for the rights of individuals. And I like that system. Now, here's what Matt Simon, one of our friends at the Marijuana Policy Project, he's the New England political director for MPP. He said in a press release, he said, quote, "Like most Granite Staters, this committee understands that it's time for New Hampshire to stop prohibiting cannabis. adults in the, quote, live free or die state, that's their motto there, should not be punished for their choice to use a substance that is objectively less harmful than alcohol, end quote. I think he's 100% right.
What I think is that when they do this, like they did this in D.C., it seems to be easier to get this passed than it is to get legalization passed. So
that's very true.
So I think that's what's happening. I think a lot of people go, well, we're going to do this because we can't get legalization because the legislation is not willing to set up guidelines for a regulated industry because that's so complicated.
Well, maybe this is
is easy. Yeah. There is no rules. There are no rules that you have to regulate.
The rules are leave me alone, government.
Leave me alone. And this might be a good kind of template for, states that are just kind of getting into, and South Dakota comes
that was
to
my
mind,
point. It's like a first step, Mm-hmm. Like the first step is we can pass this in 30 days. And all it says is get the fuck off my back. Let me grow a couple plants if I want to. Let me have an ounce of weed in my car if I need to, if I want to. So I think it's great.
Yeah, but what happens if they do? Is this what happened in California? They do set up regulations eventually. Then all these people who were under the law are all of a sudden illegal.
Not really, because the difference there is they had set up regulations for people to dispense it, to sell it. And then they changed the regulations so they no longer meet
that's true, California,
certain criteria. This is just saying this is the libertarian in me saying, let me do what the fuck I want with my life. If I want to have four plants. Now, one thing they do say, Phil, is they're fairly stringent about how you can grow it. You can't have it in your yard. You can't have it outside. It's got to be in a locked up indoor.
Right, that's the Vermont law.
That's the Vermont law. Yes, that's how I understand it. It has to be. It's very defined how you're allowed to grow it.
Well, that's actually a good idea.
Yeah.
Matt Simon goes on to say, quote, now that New Hampshire is literally surrounded by jurisdictions where cannabis is legal for adults, our current policies can no longer be justified in any way. And I think he's saying what you're saying.
Yeah.
Leave us alone. Yep. It's, quote, it's time for the House, Senate, and Governor Chris Sununu to work together and move cannabis policies into the 21st century. And I don't know what Governor Chris Sununu's. If he's the son of John Sununu, he's probably a Republican.
I would assume.
So I don't know what his attitudes are toward it. But the governors in these states, it seems to me, hold a lot of sway, don't they?
Dude, speaking of which, NORML just released its 2020 gubernatorial scorecard. Now, in Maryland, they've been doing this now, I know, for at least 2 or 3 years. And what they do, they attach a letter grade from A, meaning they're very pro cannabis and they are actually accomplishing reform, to the letter F, which means they totally fail. They're like against it. They're holding it back. So they did the research is here, and here are the findings. So 32 U.S. governors received a passing grade C or higher. So of the 50, 32 give a passing grade. Now, of those
33 states, so that's kind of interesting, right?
Right. So 32 governors received a C grade or passing. Now, of those 32 governors, 22 are Democrat and 10 are Republican. Last year, only 27 governors received a C grade or higher. Of these 9 U.S. governors, all Democrats received a letter A grade. So of the A grade, they were all Democrats. 12.
So the Republicans are holding down the curve, is what you're saying. Come on, fellas.
12 governors received a B grade of 11 Democrats and 1 Republican. 11 governors received a C grade. That's 9 Republicans and 2 Democrats. 10 governors, 9 Republican and 1 Democrat, received a D grade. And 8 governors, all Republican, received an F grade.
Ooh. Not good.
I would be interested to see some of these criteria. That sounds a little too slanted for my money. I wonder if any of NORML's bias, if there's any liberal bias being creeping in there. I'm just saying.
No,
well, actually, Jay made a good point right from the get of all the people, of all the governors that are pro, seems to come in line with a number of states that are, have some kind of are legal. And so I don't know. Is it the governors are just reflecting what the states are? Or the states, I don't know. But I do believe But I do believe, now this is how they separate the Democrats and Republican governors. But I think when you get down in the streets and separate Republican and Democrat everyday people when it comes to cannabis, there's no difference. I'd be willing to bet.
Right.
27% of Democrats and Republicans are for,
Yeah.
free weed on Thursdays or something, whatever.
So listen, Republican governors represent, okay?
The other thing that would be interesting to know would be of the switch that occurred. You said there were 27 or whatever last year, and there were 33 this year. That increase, I wonder if those are governors who've been newly elected, or if they're governors,
could be.
or if they're
study
people that change their mind, essentially.
Yeah, well,
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm sure it doesn't break that down.
The
but I'm
source
just saying
I got the information from doesn't break it down to that.
Yeah.
So
That's
I think it's interesting
Andrew.
to see. I mean, because I think this proves a point that traditionally no one would ever argue, 10, 20 years ago, no one would ever have argued that the people in favor of cannabis reform tend to be be more on the left.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Years ago, it was sort of stereotypical. But now what the saying is, what I think this is saying is it's to a certain degree still stereotypical, but I don't know. I think some politicians just ride the waves of what's going on in their hometowns.
Yeah, that's true too. Well, yeah, we see that every day.
Thank you for joining us for Vote Pro Podcast. If you enjoy the show, we'd love to hear from you. Send us your thoughts at votepropot.com/contact or send us an email at podcast@votepropot.com, and please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to be part of the show, call our message line at 240-257-2441. Tell your friends about us and be sure to like, follow and share us on social media. Just go to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter and do a search for Vote Pro Pot. Now, back to the boys.
On the subject of states, let's move on to California. We've talked about this a bunch, but there's a new article that just came out yesterday in Forbes magazine by Kevin Murphy, and he's talking about California tax increases yet again and how it only is helping the illicit market. The California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, the CDTFA, has raised taxes again on wholesale cannabis from 60% to 80%. So there's an 80% tax now at that level. Now they also have excise tax, they have a cultivation tax, and of course they have a sales and use tax, which is separate from the excise tax because they don't charge that on medical marijuana in California. They only charge it on recreational. But
if you drive a car, I'll tax the street.
That's right.
If you try to sit, I'll tax your seat.
It's absolutely insane, and it's to the point now where it's becoming absurd. And what they don't get, what the California politicians don't get, is they keep thinking, well, we need more tax revenue. We're not getting the tax revenue we expected from cannabis, so let's raise taxes.
Yeah.
But doesn't that drive more people to the black market?
Well, yes, because that works all the time in history, right? Every time you raise taxes beyond an absurd amount, you get more revenue, right?
Right. It's like the overweight person who gets depressed about being overweight and obese. And to fight off the depression, they go down and eat a quart of ice cream.
Yeah, right.
The ice cream is not your solution, man.
Well,
the ice cream's the problem. The taxes are not the solution.
California already has has the most aggressive tax structure in the country, obviously, for legal cannabis, with the 3 separate taxes: the excise, as I mentioned, on purchases, the state sales tax, and the taxes on cannabis flower, leaves, and plants. In California, illicit sellers outnumber regulated 3-1, and that's doubled in the last 2 years. I
wonder how that compares to the rest of the nation.
It's
be interesting to find
out. No one's close. California.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's 3 times. 3-1 people buy on the illegal. Now, I was just in California. I was in California a week ago. I was in LA, and I went to a dispensary. And they were wonderful in there. They were great. It was really cool. People knew their shit. They had, good product. But the prices were, I didn't think they were that ridiculously high, to be totally frank with you. They were high. But,
a little high.
What were the prices? How much was an eighth?
It was like $40.
That's in line with Maryland.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Is that basically in line?
It is, but what you have to understand is you can buy the same thing on the street out there. And I say the same thing. I mean, it's packaged and everything. It looks totally legit. It's got the labels and all. And you can buy it for 2/3 that, you know. When I say $40-$45, that was on sale. I mean, a lot of it was $55-$60, you know, a vape pen that you could buy in Maryland or, you know, anywhere around here, similar, you know, was maybe 30% more expensive, 25% more expensive.
Out there? Really? So a half gram in Maryland goes for $50.
Right.
So out there, a half gram vape cart is more?
It was $65.
For a half gram? Really? So it's cheaper in
65.
Maryland?
Yes.
Yeah, most of that is tax.
Oh, it's tax. Okay.
Most,
it's a tax.
Most is tax. Now, the author, Kevin Murphy, it says this, and I quote, he says, these new taxes hit poorer patients, including those on fixed incomes, especially hard, further exacerbating a growing divide between those who can and those who can't afford medical cannabis. And it almost guarantees more low-income Californians will be forced to seek out illicit cannabis that the state's own officials say is full of toxic chemicals, not to mention mold, rat poison, and heavy metals. It's a questionable move coming on the heels of the vaping crisis where the vast majority of tainted products originated in the illicit market. And he's right on there. I mean, that's really what it's all about. Besides the money, it's about people going, you know, I got to have my medicine. It costs me 30, 40, 50% more to buy it at the dispensary. I'm going to go get it where I used to get it. Right. And so they're defeating
the risk.
But now they're saying that it has rat poison and heavy metals in it. If they were that concerned, where were they for the last 40 freaking years? You know?
Girl, that's right.
Absolutely right. Hit the nail on the head.
I'm sorry. When they use that as an excuse, I'm going, nah, I ain't buying it. You really don't care about my health.
I'm not
buying that. No, sorry.
The bullshit meter's ringing off the end there. Well, you know, that's enough. We've covered this to death. But again, this is a brand new article, came out yesterday, and it drives home the point. And for our friends in California, you know, do what we tell you to do all the time. Get involved. You know, let your representatives know that you're not happy about this, that you don't have a problem paying your fair tax. I mean, it's worth it. It's worth paying a tax and paying fees. And the other thing that I didn't mention here is the fees for licensing and packaging and all those things on the wholesale end are exorbitant. They're unbelievable.
Right.
I mean, they have a grow fee. You got to pay. It's like $10 an ounce. The growers have to pay. And that may not sound like a lot, but think about it.
Sounds like a lot to me.
It's $160 a pound. You're paying $160 a pound to grow.
Just
on top of everything.
On top of your licensing and permitting and all the other bullshit, the regulations, the paperwork, all the lawyers you got to hire. They just don't seem to have any concept for or any empathy for the business person. They don't give a shit. It's all about the government grabbing the money.
Well, those government employees, union workers someone's got to pay their benefits. So
yeah, it's a little late for that. They're all bankrupt.
That's how it works
in California.
Well, the problem is not just with the government getting greedy with tax dollars, but also, unfortunately, with large corporate entities and people with corporate backgrounds getting into the cannabis industry, which is necessary, I must say, for the industry to grow. But some of them, they're changing their views of how regulations should go. And that's going to affect. And so, in other words, there's sort of a splinter in the pro-cannabis movement when the industry is going, we don't want home grow, and all the consumers going, wait a minute, you should be able to grow. You should be able to grow at home. So now that's the deal. Now, a lot of companies are coming up, and apparently a lot of politicians are tending to agree with them now. No, we should not allow home grow. So they came out. So, okay, here's what happened. So in New York State, they established a medical cannabis industry, and the regulations were so incredibly strict that it was very difficult, A, to get a permit, and B, to get a card to get medical marijuana. You had to have one foot in the grave. It was just the conditions were crazy.
Right.
And they also said if you want to get in there, you got to be vertically integrated. You got to grow it, you got to process it, you got to sell it.
Yeah.
And you can have
big guys only.
You can have four dispensaries, and those companies have been struggling to turn a profit. I mean, they're just everything's against them. So now, Cuomo's coming up going, hey, we're going to legalize recreational, let alone, first, renewing or making our medical program more realistic, more like Oklahoma, let's say. That great. New York should be more like Oklahoma, right?
Really? Why can't you be more like Oklahoma, New York?
Exactly. So they had to be vertically integrated. So, but now they're talking about legalizing recreational or adult use, and so these companies are sitting real pretty. I mean, they're set up so the first day they have at least 4 locations, and I'm sure when recreational opens up, they're going to be allowed to they're going to lobby for more because these companies are lobbying. Obviously, if you're one of those companies, you have deep pockets because no one did that on a shoestring budget. All these guys have a lot of money to back them up. So, granted, they're kind of, maybe just treading water, not really making a lot of money. But I really don't feel too sorry for them because one day the landslide of cash is going to be pretty big for them. So when they open up recreational in New York State, so that's what So they're lobbying, and one of the things these companies are lobbying for is they don't want home grow in the state of New York, and so they came up, and here are some of the reasons they came up with to not allow home grow. And number one is home grow will make it impossible for the state to eliminate the black market.
Oh, for God's sakes!
Right.
That's ridiculous.
That makes no sense.
Well, I think what they're saying is if you allow people to grow, they're going to start growing black market wide. But home grow is a real limit. It's only a couple plants, and I really don't think the black market needs
Andrew, it doesn't
to supply it,
and it doesn't take into account how fucking difficult it is to grow good weed, man. It's really hard.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
Anyone can make wine, but who can make good wine at home? Anyone can make beer, make good beer.
Right.
Okay, the second one, home grow will make it impossible for law enforcement to distinguish between legal and illegal products, thus frustrating enforcement efforts.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Enforcing what? I grow, I snip, I dry.
Well, here's the deal, guys.
I smoke.
Right,
it's all in my house.
Okay, guys, now police officers, we have medical marijuana, we have recreational marijuana, and we have hemp. All of which,
I was going to say that.
All of which the people who smoke it can't tell the difference. So what are we supposed to do to help you guys? I'm sorry.
Right.
And that's actually a point. The Farm Bill really had a bigger effect on law enforcement than everyone ever thought. Because what happened was now CBD flower, which is now the first, since the Farm Bill, the first harvest is out. And now we have these CBD hemp flowers that is stanky, danky stuff, man. And it just doesn't have any THC in it, but it looks, smells, and tastes like it. And it's a great product.
No kidding.
Right. So a lot of law enforcement officers said, we can't prove it's not hemp. Because when you go to court and they go, officer, it's hemp, it's legal.
That's right. And we did an article about that last year.
It costs too much money for the law enforcement to spend testing simple possession, small quantity for simple possession. For felonies, they'll test it. But they won't test it for small. So a lot of police...
And the field test for THC, but they don't have the accuracy. There's some THC.
It's just yes or no.
Them,
and you have to know a percentage.
Yes or no.
Right.
But the point is, unless you're moving large amounts of it, it's not feasible.
Right. So anyway, so I think that's sort of an interesting point. You can't tell the difference. Well, you can't tell the difference between hemp and that too. So good luck. Okay, number 3, home grow will undermine the state's harm reduction goal of ensuring that cannabis sold in New York is grown without noxious pesticides or other contaminants. Again, where have you guys been for the last 30 fucking years? We're so worried about contaminants.
Exactly.
But that's a good point. That's a good point.
It's kind of a legitimate point. I mean, granted, if you're growing weed in your basement, you got 10 plants or something, there could be mold, there could be stuff on it. Granted, but you know what? If you're growing it for yourself, it's none of their fucking business.
Right.
Now, if you're selling it to other people, that's their business. But if it's home grow, I'm making quotes with my fucking fingers here. Home grow means it's for me. It's none of your fucking business.
So put regs around it that say you can't sell the product of a home grow.
Well, they already have that.
Well, actually, that's true. But actually,
you can trade, you can, share, but you can't sell it. That's already
you can't sell. Right.
Well, and also I think with time now, the average cannabis consumer has become a little more educated. And now, if someone tried to sell me stuff, and I know what moldy pot smells like, they try to sell it to me and going, fuck no, I'm not going to buy that because it's moldy because you might have grown it perfectly, but whoever cured it screwed it up, and it's covered in mold. It's
Right.
just going to make me cough, give me
ants in
headaches, and God knows it's not going to be good on my lungs. So
Right.
So anyway,
Right. Might make you sick, yeah.
right. And here's number 4: the home grow undermine the public health interests in ensuring that cannabis sold in New York State is tested, packaged, and labeled correctly.
How is that?
Again,
if
if it's for personal use, who cares?
If you're allowed to grow 6 plants, let's say, you could have 2 flowering at a time. How much weed are you going to be giving away?
Right. And also, a lot of these people,
Right.
they're growing at home. A lot of times they want to process it. They want some oil. They want some shatter. They want some keef. They want to make hash. And that
They want whole plant.
right. Or
Juice,
they want to
you
eat
know?
whole pan.
We know the benefits of that.
Right. So let's say you're a home brewer. You grow a nice IPA at home, or you make a nice IPA at home.
Yeah.
What are the chances are that maybe you're going to go out and buy a nice lager a couple times a year? Or,
Right.
I know,
or
or some other kind of beer.
Like, that's the only thing you're going to drink is the shit you
Right.
made
So
at
if you
home?
just if you grow weed at home, there's a good chance you'll still be out buying it at the legal dispensaries. And also, I think a lot of people will be making edibles with stuff grown at home. Yeah. So I don't really think that that's really a threat to the cannabis industry.
I don't
either. It's an excuse.
It's an excuse, not a
Now,
threat.
the last one, they say homegrown, and this is the one that got me. Homegrown will cost the state tax revenue, thus hindering the state's ability to fund priorities such as drug abuse treatment and community investment.
Oh, my God. Yeah, so you know what they could do,
Tough
Andrew?
shit.
They could just raise taxes again. That's what they could do.
They said this out loud.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You know what they're saying? They're saying our tax revenues take priority over your individual liberty.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's
And they're
what-
saying it out loud.
Right.
Yep. With a straight face.
Unbelievable.
It's like we don't care about your freedoms. Us making money is more important.
Yep.
And that's right. And this is and it's so discouraging to see it happening in the cannabis world. This is what a lot of people refer to as crony capitalism.
Yeah.
It's like an unholy alliance between the big, powerful companies and the government regulators.
They're friends and lobbyists.
Right. And they make it so only those who have the money and resources to navigate and withstand all of the taxation, all the regulation, they're the only ones that get to be in business.
Yep.
And everybody else has to scramble and they get squashed. This is the libertarian in me coming out.
You, me, brother.
This is crony capitalism.
Well, I don't think you even have to be right or left, or libertarian or Democrat or Republican to think, this country was built about personal freedoms.
It sure was.
And this just steps on everything to do with that.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's a lot wrong with corporate cannabis, standing against the issue of homegrown.
Little guy.
Now another
It's-
thing that I think we've talked about before, and that is that this is a new industry, but the customers, people buying the weed, have been doing it for years. It's an old market, and these new corporate entities, I think, don't take into account cannabis culture, the established,
I think that's
Right.
very true.
Right.
And I think some people they're going to see these companies going, I don't want, we're against home grow. And the market might respond and saying, well, if you're against home grow, then we're not going to buy your product or we're not going to support your company. Now we saw that in Maryland when one of the companies sued the state to limit the number of commercial
Licenses,
grows. For commercial grows, and they responded to that. Imagine if they were telling people they can't grow in their own home. I think that could be not an image that the corporate people
one of
would
the
want to
things
have.
that along those lines that concerns me is, in most other businesses, let's just say, let's just use an example. An immigrant comes to the United States and they can scrape together a little bit of money. They can open a little pizza joint or they can open a little coffee shop. And they can build that into something. But I'm afraid that some of these regulations in some of these states are set up in such a way that that's not even a realistic possibility.
Right.
If you don't have millions of dollars in your pocket, corporate backing, vertical interests, you can't get in, and that's I just
barriers to entry.
I just hope that doesn't happen.
Well, I think there should be room for artisanal grows. Now in Jamaica, the new regulations they're writing up down there, they're going, we are definitely going to be including those growers who have been growing for years.
I read that.
And we're not even going to change the way they do it. Just let them.
It's not even a question.
They're looking at giving some of the first permits and licenses to people that are already established, that are already growing little family operations.
Yeah,
they're going to get the first 50. I think that's awesome.
The established black market. They're going right to them.
Right, exactly. That's wonderful. I love it.
And also, those guys, man, they've been keeping strains alive for generations. They got, and those are probably the greatest growers in that part of the world, hands down. Those guys in Jamaica, man. So I think it's smart.
Well,
and it's
man, I'm going down to Jamaica end of next month, man.
Oh, you are, aren't you?
And let me tell you, every little thing gonna be all right.
That's right. You are going to Jamaica.
Well, Faye is there right now. Our medical correspondent. She's doing research, I'm sure. I'm sure laying on the beach, puffing on a big fat dude. Knowing Faye, that's exactly what she's doing.
Faye, you're going to have to come back and give us a complete Jamaica wrap-up.
Yes. Yeah, we're all getting together for dinner in a couple weeks, so we'll find out how she did.
Do you think she's going to get dreads? I think she'll get dreads while she's down there. You think?
I hope. That'd be cool, man. If I had any hair left, I would. So I got to study here, guys. I got to study. And some people are not going to take well to this. I don't think some of our listeners. The byline is weed impairs driving skills long after the high is gone.
Please.
Now, does it now?
Now, well, before I read this, let's just say this is CNN, so that's kind of important. CNN online, but the reason I'm interested in this is, and I'm going to set this up, it's because the woman who is involved, or I don't know if she ran the study, Stacy Gruber. I've discussed her on the show before. She's brilliant. She heads up MIND, MIND, which stands for Marijuana Investigations for Neuroscientific Discoveries. She's really brilliant.
I like that.
She writes some great articles. She's very smart. But anyway, this study was published in the Journal of Drug and Alcohol Dependence. And what they did is they asked what they consider heavy marijuana users to drive in a customized simulator, okay, to test their abilities. And they
didn't let them out on the street?
No, I know, right? They define heavy users as a daily or near daily use, and with a minimum of 4 to 5 times a week and a lifetime exposure of 1,500 times, okay? Now, what they call, and it quotes again, disturbing findings. The users drove poorly, despite the fact that they had no cannabis in their system. So what they're deriving from this is that heavy users are not as good at operating a motor vehicle. And the summation is that any kind of machinery. And so then the question is why, who, where, when. And what she's kind of derived from this study, she being Stacy, is that, and we've discussed this before, so hear me out, okay? Before you get all pissed off and say this is total bullshit, I'm not talking to you guys, I'm talking to our listeners. She's saying that she believes that people under the age of 16, children who are using cannabis or any other drug, we've talked about it, should not be, because it does impact the development of their brain. And that obviously has an impact on their motor skills.
Well, what you may not have mentioned was that the study was only looking at chronic heavy users who started using before the age of 16.
Well, actually, it didn't. It broke it up. It broke it up into different categories. So there were the people they tested were at different ages. But what they found, and I skipped through some of this because we're getting close to running out of time here. Despite having little THC in their system, heavy users consistently performed worse on driving tasks than non-users. So they had users, heavy users, medium users, and non-users driving this simulated vehicle. The worst drivers were people who began using regularly before the age of 16. My problem with this article is not the findings, because I think the findings might be right. I mean, I don't think people
I'm sure they are,
who are 14 or 15 or 12 should be smoking weed or drinking coffee, or
Right.
Definitely not
Right?
drinking
That should be
alcohol
but
or
that should be
abusing
the headline.
chemical drugs.
Exactly.
But that should be the headline. That's my problem with
Exactly.
it. Make the headline about the children. Okay? Children shouldn't be smoking weed.
Children shouldn't be doing
Instead,
drugs.
The headline is weed impairs your driving.
right.
It does no such thing.
No, it's worse than that, Phil. It's weed impairs your driving skills long after the high is gone.
Right.
That's even
That's
worse.
what weed does. That's what the headline is. That's not what the article or the study is. It's deliberately misleading. Fake news.
So she says implicitly that this study is not designed to bolster the anti-cannabis argument in no way, because she said, in fact, it has no effect at all on people who smoke marijuana, smoke cannabis as adults, who started as adults, or used very lightly as a youth and then maybe smoke more regularly now. Those people weren't affected at all when they weren't high. It's the people who started young. So the point of her study and the article in this journal is to say marijuana is great. It's fine. Cannabis is safe. It's a great medicine. But don't let your 12, 13, 14-year-old kids use it.
Right.
Fair enough.
What do you think? Also, I was thinking while you're saying this, I was thinking when we were kids, the pot we were smoking was only 5% THC.
Yeah, that's
But when
true.
I say kids, when we were teenagers and young adults, it was pretty weak. And we were just smoking, joints or bong.
Right.
But bong hits was like the exotic way to smoke. But now you got kids. There could be teenagers out there under the age of
Shatter
50 doing shatter or smoking this high grade stuff that is just
super high
so
potency.
much more potent. And
That's
concentrated. We were just smoking tubes. These guys are getting concentrates. And
whole nother story. A
it's
good
a whole nother
point.
story.
That's
I
very
think
different.
the damage or the wake it leaves behind is going to be so much greater than just smoking 5% weed in a joint. So I think more the alcohol, everything. It's bad for the developing mind and body. So if you're young, just keep it away from young kids. And if you're young, just don't do it. And maybe in college, smoke little tubes on the weekend, a little bit here and there, maybe. But chronically doing anything's not good.
Anything, right.
Correct.
So to finish off, she says research has consistently shown that early substance use, including the use of cannabis, is associated with poorer cognitive performance, specifically task control by the most frontal part of your brain.
We would love to hear what you guys think about this. Do you have any insight on this? Do you have any stories to tell about it? Let us know. Jay, how can they get in touch with us here at Vote Pro Pot?
Send us an email at podcast@votepropot.com. Call our message line at 240-257-2441. Leave us a message. Give us an idea for a story. Tell us a story. Tell us what's going on in your state, and we'll play it on the show.
We sure will.
Yeah, and we try to cover as much as we can on the podcast, but there's so much going on that we can barely scratch the surface. So we try to share a lot on social networking. So go to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and do a search for Vote Pro Pot.
Lock me up, find me good, label me a menace to your quiet neighborhood. I don't grow no plants, the state says I can't. That's not freedom, freedom, that's the point. Smoke a bowl, I roll a joint, do what I want. If I hurt nobody, that's the point. And if I wanna get high, why shouldn't I? That's not freedom, freedom, decide what's best for you and me. Smoke a bowl or roll a joint. Do what you want if it hurts nobody. That's the point. So let's get high, yeah, you and I. It's called freedom, freedom, freedom. It's called freedom, freedom, freedom. Oh yeah, that's the point.